All right, let's dig in. Today we're talking about fossils, and their story is just incredible. I mean, we're going to go from how these strange bones sparked myths of terrifying monsters, all the way to how they became our modern map of life's entire history on Earth.
I mean, think about it. What if dragons were inspired by something real? It's a wild thought, right? For thousands of years, we've told stories of dragons and giants and griffins, but what if those legends weren't just made up out of thin air? What if they were our ancestors' very first attempt to explain something totally mind-bending they were finding buried in the ground?
So put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine you're just out, farming or building something, and you dig up a bone that's as tall as you are, or maybe a skull with a beak and horns, like nothing you've ever seen. You don't know what a dinosaur is. The idea of extinction doesn't even exist yet. What do? Well, you try to make sense of it. You create a story.
And really, that's where this all kicks off. The ancient world was just littered with these mysterious bones, and every culture looked at them through their own eyes, creating some of the most powerful, longest-lasting myths in all of history.
Okay, and this is what's so cool. The connections are almost undeniable. You look at the skeletons of these long-necked dinosaurs found in China, and it's a dead ringer for the classic Chinese dragon. And then you go over to Greece. They were finding fossils of Protoceratops, this dinosaur with a beaked face and a big bony frill. And it's pretty much a perfect match for the griffin. The creature with a lion's body and an eagle's head. The evidence was, well, literally bone deep.
And you can totally see how the giant myths got started, right? If you find a single leg bone from some massive dinosaur, and it's just that one bone, it would be completely baffling. Without the rest of the skeleton to give you any context, the most logical guess for someone back then, it must have belonged to a giant person. And just like that, from one single bone, a whole mythology of giants is born.
Okay, let's fast forward a bit. We're moving on from the ancient myths into the modern scientific era. This is when scientists started to realize these bones weren't monsters. No, they were something far more important. A global record of past life. A map of history that stretches across every single continent. And this map is it's breathtaking. Seriously, look at some of these places. In Pakistan, they found the remains of Baluchitherium. That's the biggest land mammal that ever existed, period. Over in India, we found fossils of our own early ancestors, high up on the slopes of the Himalayas. And maybe the wildest one of all is Egypt. In the middle of the Sahara Desert, scientists found the skeletons of a 56-foot-long killer whale. The only way that happens is if the Sahara was once a gigantic ancient sea.
But here's the thing. This map, this record, is incredibly fragile. Take that unique Baluchitherium skeleton. It survived for millions of years, buried in the earth, only for a bunch of the pieces to be lost during a military conflict back in 2006. It's a heartbreaking reminder of how delicate these windows into the past are. Once they're gone, they are gone forever.
And this brings us to a really, really important point. Finding a fossil, honestly, it's like winning the lottery. The huge, overwhelming majority of living things that have ever existed just vanished, without a trace. Becoming a fossil is an unbelievably rare event.
So just how rare are we talking? Well, get ready for this. Scientists estimate that less than 1/10 of 1%, that's less than 0.1% of all species that have ever lived, became fossils. Let that sink in. For every one creature we find fossilized, 1,000 others, at least, are just gone forever.
Okay, so if it's that hard to become a fossil, what's the secret? What's the perfect recipe? What special set of conditions has to happen for a creature to basically cheat death and time and get immortalized in stone?
Well, here it is, the secret recipe, broken down into 4 key steps. Step 1, you gotta sink fast. The animal dies and has to get buried quickly, usually in water, so scavengers can't get to it. Step 2, get buried deep. It needs to be covered fast by layers of stuff like mud, sand, or maybe volcanic ash. Step 3, the pressure cooker. For millions of years, more and more layers pile on, and the pressure turns all that sediment into solid rock. And finally, step 4, this is the magic part, the mineral swap. Groundwater seeps in, and the minerals in it slowly replace the original bone, bit by bit, creating a perfect stone replica. Now, it's super important to remember that this whole process is amazing for hard stuff. Bones, teeth, shells. That's actually why something like 90% of all the fossils we find are from marine creatures, because the conditions at the bottom of the sea are just perfect for this. But all the soft parts, skin, hair, feathers, organs, nope, they almost always get completely destroyed by all that pressure and time.
But
What if I told you that wasn't the only way? That nature has a couple of other tricks up its sleeve for making fossils. We're talking about fossils that are even more spectacular, like perfect little time capsules from a long-lost world.
And this is one of the coolest methods right here. On the one hand, you've got your standard sedimentary fossil, the kind we've been talking about. But on the other hand, you have amber. Here, the preservative isn't rock, it's hardened tree sap. And just look at the difference in what gets saved. You've got this super sticky tree resin oozing down a trunk, and it acts like glue, trapping some poor, unsuspecting insect or tiny lizard, maybe even just a feather. Then, over millions of years, that resin hardens into amber, creating this perfect 3D snapshot. We can literally see the delicate wings of a fly or the individual hairs on a spider that lived 50 million years ago. It's incredible.
But there's another way to make a time capsule. Nature's deep freeze. I want you to meet Luba. Now, she is not a rock copy. This is the actual body of a 1-month-old baby mammoth. She died 40,000 years ago and was basically flash frozen in the ice of Siberia.
And the level of preservation is it's mind-blowing. Scientists found her hair and her skin. Her eyelashes were still there. They could even study her internal organs. And maybe the most amazing thing of all, they found traces of her mother's milk still in her stomach. It's a look into the Ice Age that we just can't get anywhere else. And lastly, there's one more type. Sometimes you don't find the animal at all. Instead, you find the evidence it left behind. These are called trace fossils. Think of them like ghostly stories told in rock, footprints, nests, burrows. They don't tell you what the animal looks like, but they tell you how it lived, how it walked, where it slept, even what it ate.
So, okay, we've gone all the way from ancient myths to modern science. We've seen how these incredible relics get made and how we find them. But everything we've talked about, it all leads to two huge, enduring questions. And these questions are the foundation for pretty much everything we know about the history of life.
So, first question, we've got millions of these fossils, right? But how do we actually connect the dots? How does a fossil of, say, an ancient whale that had legs in Pakistan prove a connection to the whales swimming in our oceans today? How does this whole fossil record actually give us proof of evolution? And the second question is all about time. How on earth can a scientist look at a piece of rock and say, with any real confidence, this thing inside is 40,000 years old, but this other one is 40 million years old? I mean, what kind of clocks are they using to measure that kind of deep time?
And here's the bottom line. The answers to those two questions, they aren't just minor details. The entire theory of evolution stands on them. They are the absolute pillars of modern biology. So yeah, we went from mythical monsters to the building blocks of evolution. Fossils are our deepest, most profound connection to the history of life on our planet. But how we actually figure out the answers, how we read that history, well, that's a story for another time.